What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Move Better channel. I'm your host, Dr. Joe, and this is the Professor John Penacerrata.
What up?
Today, we're going to be talking about the different ways of warming up and what's the best way for an athlete to warm up versus a person that's in pain. All right, and there's all types of
approaches and even overlaps as far as like what is the proper way to warm up, right? Everybody has different ways. If you go with the current athlete versus athlete in the past, or even some of the practice of martial arts, right?
Yeah.
What is the best way? So we'll do that today, and hopefully you enjoy it. Warm it up. We've seen everything from people that will do static stretching for a warm up, or dynamic stretching,
or ballistic,
right? And in the past, we've had studies actually, again from the Western sciences of yes and no, don't do this, don't do that, but yet we've seen different athletes and even old practices that will say that will do it, right? So ballistic stretching as a warm up. If you look at track athletes, they do it all the time, right? And then you have, if you go to a martial arts studio, a lot of the things that they'll do is they'll start with a static stretch, right? And then conventionally in the fitness industry, we used to just, get the blood flow going, as we would say, and get the cardiovascular up a little bit within the 3 to 5 minutes. And we use that as a warm-up. So what really is the best way, and what is it that we should do?
Well, there's so many different principles out there. And like you were explaining, the principles, even in fitness and in sport, it's all different. But the way we like to do it at Shift is it depends on where you are with your program. Now, we have different areas in programming that start with foam rolling, right? And I've said it in the past, foam roll, stretch, activate an area, and then move it. That's more for a recovery standpoint. That's more for a pain person that's dealing with some type of pain and pain management, and we're trying to recreate movement from a person that has never really moved before, right? That's completely different from Exhibit A to Exhibit C, where a person that is an extreme athlete that moves in all different directions, moves all around 7 days a week, and that exercises and lifts a lot of weight. Now, it depends on where the person is, and that's the reason why we brought this topic up today, is because every single person is different. So let's start with the pain athlete. Let's start with the person that that is dealing with injuries. We at Shift, we start with what's the dysfunctional movement pattern that we see. We work at it in a plane of motion. We break up the different planes, and we start with the anterior or with the sagittal plane, which is our plane of moving forward and back, right? And so if we think about the body and the way it moves, we have flexion exercises, we have extension exercises, we have forward moving, and we have backward moving. Those muscles that work in those planes are specifically your sagittal plane muscles. Then we have your coronal plane or your frontal plane movements, which will allow you to move laterally, and they'll actually keep you in alignment to help with that sagittal plane. So we have muscles that keep me in alignment. If I'm moving forward and back, I have these muscles on the side that allow me to stay on my track and allows me to stay straight. Now, that's the coronal or frontal plane motion. Now we have the rotational movements, right? We have horizontal rotational exercises, which is our hands are going to be up right over here. And then we have rotational movements of our thoracic spine, or rotational movements of our thoracic spine. So rotation, our movements are a different plane of motion. We want to make sure that we break it down in those three different planes. And so we want to make sure that they have forward sagittal plane function first. So we want to make sure that they can touch their toes. We want to make sure that they can extend. And we retrain it in those patterns that don't have that first. And so we foam roll, we stretch, we do some dynamic stretching when we start to progress them. And then we isolate the isometric activation of the local areas that are dysfunctional. Then we start to recreate patterns in those planes of motion first. That's number one. Now let's take it to the next athlete, the one that we start to progress, right? Now we're looking at more of the fundamental movement patterns that we've got to retrain, because now they're out of pain. we've got to take them to the next stage, which is warming up properly, right?
Right.
What are some of the things that you would do with a person that is working in fundamental movement patterns?
Well, I like to, see, well, if they're out of that pain, I like to see if there's still a little bit of restriction as far as like if they're moving through their range of motion, and then slowly glide through those ranges of motion. And as the tissues warm up, they will start loosening up. And then you can start getting a bigger range of motion, right? But not to overstretch, but really just to stimulate the joints and the connective tissue in those joints.
And in your case, you're talking about flexibility, but you're also mainly focusing on mobility.
Mobility,
right?
absolutely.
So we don't necessarily have to foam roll an excessive amount of time. Maybe we don't even foam roll at all, but we start to create mobility changes. So those are fundamental patterns. And Matt, I'm going to have you put up on the screen over here our pyramid, our functional movement pyramid that we go through. And so if you notice at the base of the pyramid, we have fundamental movement patterns. That fundamental movement patterns doesn't necessarily mean we have to foam roll. We just have to create flexibility along the restriction lines that we normally have. And so that is from stretching, whether it's dynamic or whether it's static or passive. And then we take advantage of that new movement by adding load. We want to load the joints more, and we want to load those patterns more and more and more. And so that is Exhibit B, right? You have Exhibit A, which is going to be the one that's in pain. We have to stimulate movement. We have to decrease pain. Then we have a person that comes to us that is restrictive in their movements, but they don't have any pain. Right? And so we want to teach them mobility. And there's different ways of going about with mobility training, right? We want to work on control around your range of motion and not just flexibility, right? And then we have Exhibit C, which is a person that has been trained, knows how to exercise, works out in their sport. I'm not going to be specifically putting them on bands and having them sit there and stretch. Although that's part of it, that may be part of it, that's not something that I need to prime this person. I need to get them working in a plane of motion that allows them to get ready for their sport.
Ready for the movement that they're going to be actually training in.
Exactly. And so again, there's a lot of studies. Does stretching help? Does it not help? Especially with an athlete that plays soccer, football, baseball, basketball, badminton, whatever it is, your sport is going to allow you to move. So we want to prepare you for that sport properly. And so what I would normally do with my athletes in strength and conditioning, I would probably have them run, do a quick run, maybe 100 yards to 200 yards, and then have them come back, and then I would immediately start them in their plyos, right? I would start plyometric exercises, which will allow for priming of their movement patterns, right? And when I say priming, it's readying the nervous system to prepare for an extensive workout, for an extreme workout or a heavy workout or whatever you want to call it. So like we've done in a previous video, we've talked about pain-free movement. And we worked in pain-free movements so that way we can prepare our movements or our exercises for the day ahead of us, right? And so we would have them do some plyos. So what does plyos mean? It could be anywhere from working with a medicine ball. And as I said before, we want to work them in very specific planes first and then end with a rotational pattern. So we start with sagittal plane, which is going to be more flexion extension. I'd grab a medicine ball and I'd have them throw it on the ground. And I'd have them use that explosive movement from picking up, utilizing that posterior chain to extend, throwing that ball down and working more of a power move when doing that. And I don't have to burn them out. That's something that is
misconception.
A misconception that people do all the time, right? And then I'd grab a medicine ball and I'd have them do it at an angle. Right? I'd have them do some rotational twists. I'd have them do some squat jumps. I'd have them do some lateral movements. And then I'd work on dynamic mobility. I'd work on dynamic stretches, which is maybe some walking lunges, some world's greatest stretch movements while they're moving through some movements. And then like track athletes, for example, they'll work on skips. They'll work on
a little more explosiveness.
Explosive movements to get them ready.
Ballistic as well,
And they take their time. Especially when we see sprinters work out, they're not huffing and puffing when they're trying to work on their sprints. They're working, they're doing some leg exercises, and then they stop.
And this is one thing too, like you're bringing up, they're taking their time. A lot of just the weekend warriors or just the general public, we don't warm up.
Yeah.
You know, so
Yeah.
you know, if there's anything you want to take away from this message, from this video, is you should definitely warm up before you get into your sport, your activity, your workout, whatever it is. There should be some warm up patterns that you got to get into just to prime your body. It's definitely
wake up the
needed.
nervous system.
Yeah, wake up the nervous system.
So if you're trying to warm up for your day, for example, one of the things that I tell for the everyday Joe, for the everyday average Joe that wakes up in the morning, some of the things that I have them do is get on the floor and get back up. Right? I remember it brings me back to that memory of Batman Begins, where Christian Bale wakes up and gets out of bed and then he starts doing some push-ups right away. Those are some exercises that you could do to just prime the system, wake the nervous system up right away. You can get down, you can start doing some push-ups, and then, or you can get down and get on the floor and get back up and do that 5 times, right?
Oh yeah.
If you're a person that has a lot of restrictions,
that would be something.
Lay down on the ground, get back up, right? I mean, that wakes everything up. I don't even care if you hold onto your bed as you get up, but try to get down on the floor. Some of my patients that don't move enough, I simply have them go, I give them the challenge. Can you get up? Can you lay down completely on the floor and get right back up about 75 to 100 times a day?
Yeah.
Right? And that's a big challenge.
Try 10.
Yeah, I mean 25, if I say 25 in the first half of the day, 25 in the second half of the day, and then 25 in the evening, you're on your way of moving pretty well. And I've had some people lose weight. I've had people all of a sudden get more into their mobility exercises. But those are some things that you can simply do just to get yourself going in the morning.
Yeah, I've seen people, as simple as, here, when we say get down on the ground, I mean, just go right here. Can you sit down like this and then come back up?
Yeah.
Now do it without using my hands, right?
Or just frickin' kneel down.
Kneel down, right.
Kneel down. Can you put your knee down on the ground as you hold on to something?
Yeah.
And then walk your hands out. Walk your hands back up. So there's so many different ways that you can prime your system and prime your body without the use of plyometrics, but simple movements.
Yep.
And I would recommend get down on the floor, whether you just put your knees down or lay your stomach completely on the floor or lay your back on the floor and then get back up. And the last one is rolling. Lay on your stomach, roll around. Roll from your stomach completely out with your hands out, turn around, roll on your back. Can you do that? Those are some exercises that are very, very basic, but I guarantee you it's way harder than you think if you don't move enough.
You just reminded me of, I make my clients do bear crawls. I mean, it's simple, right?
Yeah.
Like it's simple, like 3-step forward, 3-step back.
Just putting your hands on the ground.
It's already tough. Yeah.
Thanks for joining us on another episode of the Move Better channel. Let us know what you guys think in the comments below. Share with some of your friends, with some of your family, on what you guys think a warm-up is and how a warm-up can actually help strengthen your movement programs. Thanks again, you guys. We'll see you guys on the next episode.